My name is Casey Siekman, and I am. There we go. Hello. I'm Casey Siekman. I am a instructor and software engineer over at Prime Digital Academy, which is a 20-week fully immersive program that teaches people how to become software developers. And we focus on like the holistic growth of the student, not just teaching them how to code, but teaching them how to be developers. So that includes like public speaking, working in pairs, working in groups, working on that communication within groups. Now we've included working remotely, how to make that work. And then just professional development as well, which are amazing professional development person, Christy Larson. I don't know your actual title. I think it's like community engagement manager, something like that. I'm sorry, Christy. She's here right now. So if anybody's interested in Prime, myself or her would be more than happy to talk to you about that. I think it's such an amazing industry to be a part of. And we focus on React, Express, Node, SQL. And the reason I'm telling you all of this right now is because my interactions with my students have directly impacted the way I view teamwork, the way I view communications. Not only do I get to kind of peek in on all of these things happening, I also get to practice my own skills on them and try to help them communicate better with one another and more effectively do their work. And Christy is the Director of Employer Partnerships. Thank you, Christy. I am so sorry. I did not know what your title was. So that is a little bit of background on me and kind of lets you know where I'm coming from getting into this presentation and what is even up with this presentation. The title is I Work Better Alone and Other Lies You Tell Yourself. I actually built this presentation off of that title because I heard that sentence. I hear it so many times. I hear it with the students I work with in their groups, especially in small group projects that you only have about a day and a half to work on, and there's 4 people working on a full stack CRUD application. A lot of the hardships the students run into is working with one another. It's not so much the code, it's how to work through this project with other people. And so I kind of hear that a lot where it was like, this would be so much easier if I could just do it by myself. But at its core, I just believe that is just not true. Maybe for those day-long projects, it's kind of like, well, we have a day to do this and we're spending 2 hours trying to figure out how to communicate. It's really taking away from our code. You know, that's a little bit different. But at Prime, we kind of force that experience to encourage our students to understand what it's like to work in groups. And since we're such an accelerated program, sometimes our projects only last like a day or two until their final project at the end, which is about 4 weeks. So that sentence right there, I think I could do this better alone, was really what sparked this idea for me. And then I was like, well, I can't just say I work better alone. What else can I finish this title off with? And I was like, well, other lies you tell yourself. Because I think just as humans, to get by, to keep pushing forward, sometimes we just tell ourselves lies. And sometimes we do it so quickly we don't even realize that we're doing it. It's just kind of an emotional reaction to kind of I think a lot of times we tell ourselves lies to be okay with the status quo. Like kind of that dog. I wish I had that picture now. The dog, the comic of the dog that's sitting in the room that's on fire. And it has the little thought bubble. It says, this is fine. You know, that's a lie that dog is telling itself. It's not fine. The room is on fire. So I think a lot of other lies we tell ourselves is trying to make this is the way we've always done it. Everything's going to be okay. Let's just keep pushing forward instead of really analyzing, is there a better way to do this? Is this maybe not what I need right now? So that's kind of what this presentation is all about. I'm going to be focusing on 3 main fallacies. The first one is I work better alone. The second one and the third one, I'm not going to tell you about yet because I don't want to distract you and have you thinking about those already. So we'll get to them when we get to them. So the first one, I work better alone. I think how I frame this up, my students kind of saying, this would be so much easier if I could just do this by myself. I have a feeling that a lot of us have felt that. Is there anybody in this room that has ever thought that? Like, this would just be so much easier if I didn't have to work with a project manager or work with a UXer or work with a junior developer that I have to kind of shepherd along, or work with a team lead that is just like way too big picture and all I want to do is get this task done. Feel free. Also, I love back and forth in these things. So if you want to talk, if you have questions, feel free to type them up. Betsy will interrupt me and give me questions. I'm not sure if you're able to speak, but yeah, feel free to interact with me. I think that's so much more fun. So yeah, it seems like some people have had that thought, and it's totally okay if that's just like a thought that has come through your mind where it's just like, oh my gosh, can I just do this alone? It would get done so much faster. Yes. So let me bang that out. Yeah, I just need to go heads down, just get this done. And that's always kind of like a short-term solution, right? Where it's like, okay, once we get this done, then we'll be able to really take time and focus on how to bring the team in, right? And I think that's definitely a solution sometimes. That's definitely something that we have to do sometimes. Like, working together in a team is a lot of work. It takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of communication, which sometimes feels like it's not the best use of time because it's like, we're on a tight deadline. We should be coding. Let's see. I have a couple of bullet points that I've written down about the disadvantages of working in a team. So we've kind of touched on a couple of those. It's complicated. If everybody's working on something different, I'm sure we've all run into merge requests or merge conflicts. And if you haven't before, you're very lucky, and you will run into it. Or if you are not a coder, you have worked with someone directly that has had to deal with merge conflicts. And that happens when people are working on the same code and they try to push up to the master code repo at the same time, and their code is different and it conflicts with one another. And so then you just have to kind of talk to each other and figure out how to fix this when it's just like, oh my gosh, let's just get this code working. And it just, anything that just takes away from coding time just seems like it's not worth it. I very much feel the opposite. I think the more upfront work you can do when you're setting up a project, talking about how you're going to communicate, talking about what it's like for you in a stressful situation, how do you react, getting your team prepped for that, what do you need when you're stressed out, setting those norms with your team. I think that upfront investment really pays off once you really get into the weeds with the coding, because your filters fall away, your energy is drained, you aren't going to be a great communicator when you're super stressed out. And so the more work you put in up front, the better it's going to be when you hit those hard times. How about any of you? What kind of disadvantages do you have working in teams? What do you feel are some disadvantages of working in teams? And right now it's just kind of a thought exercise. Even if you feel like you're playing devil's advocate, we're setting up a debate right now, right? So what kind of disadvantages do you see working in teams? Yeah, I see Nicholas right there. This was from a little bit ago, but it says, it would take me longer to spec out the implementation details for somebody else to do it versus just coding it myself. Yeah. Said and heard. Yep. Chatty colleagues. That could be a disadvantage if you just want, or if you're kind of that person that's like, I'm here to work, let's work. Others looking down on those who aren't sure of something, having to explain your decisions, your thoughts. I've definitely felt that. I feel like definitely I've had to defend my pull requests sometimes where it's just like, oh my gosh, just put the code in the project. Let's go. Spend time refactoring code. Everybody writes code differently. And that's why it's good to set up those standards beforehand too. But you can definitely see in a project, you can be like, yep, that was Steven. That was Amy. That was Marie. Like, you can see people's like kind of personal touch on all their code, which is interesting, but sometimes it's super annoying because you just want your code to be nice and smooth. Coordination of the work, keep from stepping on each other's work. Yep, lots of time discussing options when either will work, short term and long term. Oh my gosh, that's a huge part of it. I listened to a really fantastic episode of, I think, Freakonomics, and it was called How to Make Meetings Less Horrible. And their big focus was on just making meetings more effective. And we're going to get into that a little bit later with our third topic of setting a comfortable and safe environment that really lets those meetings flourish and you can actually come to conclusions. I've been in so many meetings where there is just two people fighting, saying that their opinion is better, instead of remembering the point of the meeting was to come to a conclusion, to find a solution to something, instead of each person trying to win the conversation. And then no solution is come to at the end of the meeting, and then you have to schedule another meeting. And I think that is so frustrating. Yeah, so I think we all have feelings about working in teams, right? But there are some advantages to working in teams. Collaboration, brainstorming. You are one person, right? You have one set of experiences. You have one background. You have one set. You might have a particular set of skills, but you just have that one set of skills, right? What other, I'm going to get into an exercise right after this, so I'm going to talk more about advantages, but what kind of advantages do you see from working in teams? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I love that too. I think that's a really great saying. What other advantages have y'all seen working in teams? I'd love to hear like firsthand experiences too. I know it's kind of awkward because we can't really talk back and forth, it seems, but I love seeing the chats. Not everyone has the same of information. Collaboration brings all info to the table. Lots of ideas. Helps me take the blinders off. Innovative thinking. Yeah. Diversity in ideas. Multiple people know what's happening. How it's happening so I can go on vacation. I love that one. Yes. Yes. I think people, when they don't delegate, when they aren't open to working in teams, I kind of feel like those are the same people that think the weight of the company is on their shoulders and they can't take a day off because they're so important. Which, you know, it might be true, but I think we always think we're so important and that the world is going to come crashing down if we take a vacation. But if we are open and honest with our teams and work and get that flow of communication going, we can take vacations and know that everything is going to be okay. It's kind of nice. It's a great place to be. Uncovers assumptions and biases. Accountability partners. Yes. I have to say what I'm going to do and I have to be accountable for it tomorrow. I love that. I am a big accountability person. I don't ever want to be making decisions in the dark, in a vacuum, all by myself, because I'm just one person. I don't want all that responsibility. I want some other people that I can be like, hey, we did this together and maybe it didn't work out, so let's work on this together to fix it and then keep moving forward together. Let's keep moving further together. All right, so we have something at Prime at the very beginning. We used to do strengths finders, but we've switched over to superpowers, and that's the card deck I've been playing with. You've seen me like mixing around cards. I kind of like having my hands occupied. It's kind of nice. But we do superpowers, and I was so interested in it. I went out and bought my own deck, and I got my own superpowers book. And so we have a little exercise that makes you realize what your strengths are, what your superpowers are, but also how important it is to work in teams because you cannot do it all. All right, so here are some of all of the cards are showing up right here. The cultural compass, the peacemaker, evangelizing, pattern mapping, empathy, recalibration, problem solving, experimentation, ingenuity, complexity busting, energy. Yes, I am going to read all of these because I think it's that important. Negotiation, harmonizing, gap detection, creative thinking, systems thinking, provocation, vision, grit, motivation, and decisiveness. And before this exercise, we have everybody kind of figure out what their few superpowers are, 2 or 3. I want you to pick like 1 or 2. You don't have like the whole description, like each card kind of has a whole description. Like creative thinking is, this team keeps going down a well-worn path. They want to break out and try new things, but gravity pulls them towards what's familiar. No matter how or where they start, they end up someplace they've been before. They need a fresh approach, which is why they need you. So I don't have all of the specific descriptions down here, but just at its surface. Do you think you're the person that provocates new ideas? Are you the person that keeps pushing forward with your grit? Are you the person that can feel the kind of the mood of the room? Are you the one that brings people together? Are you the one that can kind of see where the gaps are? Are you the person that's like, we haven't thought of this yet? So take a moment, kind of look through this, and maybe even write down if you can. I want you to remember, what are a couple of these superpowers that describe you? And if you want to, I would love it if you could put them in the chat too. I would love to see the room, what our superpowers are. And I already have some situations written up, which if everybody has all the same superpowers, it could just like fly in my face. But I think, the point will come across. Energy, systems thinking, empathy, gap detection, decisiveness, evangelizing, empathy, vision. Okay, good. I'm glad we have a good array of people here. Empathy, problem solving, gap detection, energy, motivation, empathy. Oh, heck yeah, Christy, you are those 100%. Evangelizing, vision, systems thinking, complexity busting, problem solving, creative thinking, gap detection, systems thinking, vision, empathy, decisiveness, complexity busting, evangelizing. I love it. We have a very fun group of people here, which is cool because I think we're all like in the tech industry, but it's cool to see what our specific superpowers are. So what I'm going to be doing next is on this next slide, I have a list of different situations. And what I want you to do is say, yes, I am that person. I will be that person on that team. Or are you going to be like, that's kind of out of my wheelhouse. I can't do this alone. Feel free. All of the situations are listed, so I'm just going to read them one at a time, but they're all listed. And feel free to, again, go into the chat and say, yes, that's me. I got that. I'm the person you need. Or you can say, I'm going to need help. I need that person on my team. All right. Can you really do it alone? So the team stress level is hot. Chaos reigns supreme. We need someone to bring the temperature back to normal. Can you help recalibrate? Do we have any recalibrators here? Or is this something that people are going to need help with? Help. We need help. We got somebody who can help. We have Allie who can help. We have lots of people that need help, right? This is something you cannot do alone for the most part. And we have a couple people that are going to be able to jump in and help out. All right, for the next one, your new team is quiet. They don't voice any concerns, but something's not quite right. Can you empathize and figure out how to build the relationships this team needs? Do we have an empathizer? Do we have some people that need help with this? Do we have some people that are like, you know what? This is a great skill, but it's not in my wheelhouse. I need help with this. I think we have a lot of empathizers. And we do have a lot of people that need help with this, which is okay, because you have other superpowers. The project is complicated. We need someone to see the forest and the trees and the root system. Can you help navigate with your systems thinking? All right, the team has been talking and talking and talking. We need someone that doesn't fear failure to help move these ideas forward and start experimenting. Do we have anybody that just loves to just get their hands dirty, get in there, try something out? Feeds off of failure. I'm all over that one. I love it. All right, and the last one. We need someone who can pace themselves, continue to push forward, overcoming setbacks and procrastination, and motivate others with their grit. Are you just that person that's like, you know what? Again, we can keep pushing forward. When you get a big task, I've been in teams where people are just like, that's impossible. We can't do that. And there's that one person that's like, let's give it a try. Let's do it. Let's push forward. Let's get beat up. That's how we're going to get better. And so I have a tiny little thing down here that says, don't forget about the shadow strengths. So that's kind of like the end of this exercise. What I wanted everybody to learn from this was like, sometimes you got the skills to pay the bills, right? You are that person we need. But sometimes you don't. And that's okay. A person can only do so much. But that is where the strength of a team comes from. And it is worth all of those disadvantages that we talked about earlier. Pouring more time into communicating, pouring more time into setting up the project so that we know how to communicate, we know what to do when things get rough. This is why it's worth it. Also, just the diversity of backgrounds, the diversity of opinions, not just the diversity of demographics, but what comes with that is a different experience, different opinions, and that is what's going to make our software so powerful and helpful. I think that's what we all want to do. We want to make good software that's going to help out as many people as possible. We want our customer base, our user base is the entire population for the most part. You know, there's definitely like little niche apps that are only for a specific set of people, but for the most part, we want to appeal to the broadest amount of people possible. And we can only do that if we have a team that is broad with diversity as well. We need all these people. So there are shadow strengths. I'm not going to talk too much about this, but just in case some of these were like, man, grit, that sounds like, it's like there's sometimes you just don't want to overcome stuff. Sometimes you got to really face it and fix it. So that is where like the shadow sides come in. One of my big superpowers is energy and positivity. But those have their shadows because sometimes people don't want to hear it. And I have to learn that. And sometimes I can't be like, it's going to be great. It's fantastic. Let's just get up and kind of get our blood moving. And sometimes people just don't want that. So those are like the shadow strengths. And that's also in this book. If anybody is interested in it, it's the Superpowers by SY Partners. And that's SY Partners. All right. So that actually is the first fallacy, the first lie. I work better alone. You might think that you do because it can be very frustrating to work with others, but it is so worth it. It's going to make you a better employee, a better developer, an overall better person because it's going to open your mind to things that you just were not aware of before. And you're going to learn to appreciate people for who they are, what they have to offer, and the experience that they bring to your group. I do see a question right here. Any tips on provoking diverse opinions? Yes. I think I might cover that in my next two items. Oh, thank you, Betsy. That's awesome. So ask me again at the end of this, Mark, if I don't answer the question with these next two items. All right. The fool's choice. This is another fallacy. The fool's choice, I'm just going to go to the next slide. It's from this book called Crucial Conversations by Patterson, Granny, McMillan, and Switzler. And taken right from that is many people make the fool's choice in crucial conversations when they believe they have to make unpalatable either or choices. For instance, choose between telling the truth about a problem versus staying silent to preserve a relationship with a boss, coworker, or loved one. Believing you only have two problematic alternatives to choose from is a fool's choice, but there are always more alternatives. So what they're saying here is either I can be honest with this person and they're going to get mad at me and we're not going to have a good relationship anymore, or I can stay silent and become resentful and then, my valid opinion will just not be heard. It's either or, one or the other. They both suck. But that's not always the case. I'm trying to think if I have a personal fool's choice that I'm dealing with right now. It's not work related. It's with my parents. We have differing political opinions. And I always have wanted to just kind of be like, why? Why do you feel this way? But my fool's choice that I'm stuck between, and I am not practicing what I preach right now, I will be honest, because I can either bring it up and ask them about it and strain our relationship, make them upset, make me upset to have the conversation, or what I'm doing right now, I can just stay silent and grow a little bit resentful. And that is my current fool's choice. But I know that there's another option. It's tough. It's much easier to make the fool's choice and say, you know what? I'm just going to stay quiet, or I'm just going to have this blunt conversation, and if they hate me, that's their problem. But having a conversation with the person is always the third choice. There's always something else that you can do. There's always another way to go about it. What I need to do, I know what I need to do with my parents. It's hard right now because quarantine. I want to do this in person, but I just need to listen to them. Instead of coming at them saying, you're wrong, I'm right, and here's why, I need to first seek to understand before seeking to be understood. I need to understand where they're coming from, what makes them make this choice. That's my goal for Q1. My personal goal for Q1 is to have that conversation. And so that's personal, but it is something that, we're preserving relationships with a boss, coworker, or our loved ones. Can anybody think of like a fool's choice that maybe they're in the middle of right now with work? A lot of times, like a choice at work is either, I have one. Prime is working on updating our curriculum right now. So we teach React, and in the React world, React hooks is kind of the way things are trending, and we're moving towards that. And I didn't agree with it at first, just because I didn't like it. And I was like, why are we even making this change? Do we need to? But I could have stayed quiet because I didn't want to upset everybody else that was on board. I didn't want to seem like the wrench that's getting thrown into the wheel and kind of screeching things to a halt. I was like, well, I can either stay silent because I don't want to do that, but then I'll always kind of resent this and hate hooks. Or I can speak up and say, hooks is stupid. I think we should stick with the way things are. Let's keep doing class components. That's my opinion. And if you don't like it, I don't like you. But I didn't do that. I voiced my opinion, and you know what? I didn't voice my opinion. I asked questions. I didn't have to tell them what I was really thinking. I asked questions to learn more about why we were making this decision. I asked if there was data to back it up. I asked if we had talked to hiring partners. I asked if this was something that we saw, in the community that was going to be something that was going to help our students. Because mainly it seemed like the decision had been made. But I found a third choice and raised those questions, which can be hard sometimes. It can be hard to be the person questioning the decision. But I think it made us all feel a lot more, I don't want to say justified, but a lot more confident in our decision to make this huge change. Because we have to go through and change a whole lot of items in our curriculum to switch from class components to hooks. And I can honestly say I feel a lot more comfortable with the decision. By bringing up those questions, asking those questions, getting the answers I was looking for. Sometimes they weren't the answers I was looking for, but they were the answers I needed to be able to feel confident in the fact that we had made this decision, we're going forward, and I felt like I had been heard. If you make sure people are heard, even if you don't go with their decision, they are much more likely to be on board with the decision that is made because they were heard. At least they know, they know where I was coming from. They heard the questions I asked. And we're still deciding to go forward with this decision. I feel more confident about moving forward with this. And one of those ways, you have to make sure to ask people for their opinions. You can't just let people bring things to the table if they want to, because then you're going to get the same people over and over again. And this might hit back on what Mark asked, how to bring up those diverse opinions. You have to ask. You have to require it. You have to give the space for it. You can't say, okay, so we're going to do this. Do we have any questions? And then look down and be like, no questions? Okay, next. Right? You have to actually provide the space and then provoke people to say it and say, hey, Mark, what do you think? Casey, what do you think? What are your opinions on this? Good, bad, how are you feeling? You might have to figure out what questions to ask to get an answer out of them that's not just I don't care, whatever, yes, no. Good either way. So that might be work that you have to do on your part, which I can't give you I can't tell you what to ask because it's it depends on the situation, depends on the team. But I do know that you have to ask it to everyone. You have to provide that space. Because if people feel like they just don't matter, their opinion doesn't matter, if they're not specifically asked for their opinion, they're not going to give it. And we need it. So that's the fool's choice. The Abilene paradox, is this the same thing? It might be something. It might be the same thing. I just really latched onto this when I was reading Crucial Conversations, and it just was so visual. The fool's choice. But when I Googled it, it only came up in this book, so it might not be a well-known thing. There might be an actual paradox out there. All right. Any questions before we move on to our last fallacy? We have a few minutes left, so this one's pretty quick. Oh, Anna, thank you for bringing this up. So my fool's choice, silently resenting restrictive story pointing rules or arguing angrily with my manager during team meetings about the restrictions. Spoiler alert, neither way improves the process. Yes, I think that's the biggest one. Staying silent and being resentful or speaking up and getting in a big fight. It's I can do one or the other. Which one do you want me to choose? And usually staying silent's a little bit easier, right? But that doesn't always have to be the case. I have had those meetings before. And I think what you have to do in those situations is we have to figure out what the core of the problem is instead of trying to address all of the symptoms of it. in my situations, it was always like, well, what does a point mean? How much is a point? What is half a point? What is a sprint? Like what we needed to do was really get to the core instead of having that conversation over and over and over again, setting a standard, and then also just setting a schedule for the meeting, making sure people knew like what we were getting into, what was off limits for this meeting, what was the point of this meeting, and how to stay on topic. That was a big thing for us. We have networking right after this, so I don't want to take that away from you. But if anybody is ever interested in more of this, because I would love to get more into like specific examples and answer more questions, you can always contact me on LinkedIn or on Twitter. My Twitter handle is at the end of this again, but I'm always open for talking more about this stuff. It's my favorite. The last fallacy or lie is leaders lead with strength. You have to be strong if you're a leader. You have to be that stoic, statue that people look to see how they should be at work and just be like, we are strong. Let's push forward. I think that's such a lie. I don't have any official numbers or stats on this, but there are two things that I do know. Teams do better when they feel safe and supported. And by better, I mean they're more efficient, they're more productive, they're more creative, they're more communicative when they feel safe and supported. Creative ideas are spawned by brainstorming sessions and failure, trying things out, not just sitting around pontificating. I mean, that's part of it, but some action needs to be taken at some point. And if you feel safe and supported and motivated to take those risks, you're going to get so much more out of your team. So not only do teams do better when they feel safe and supported, I do know that leaders set the tone. You look to your leaders to understand how you should act in an environment. If you are a leader, you need to lead with empathy and grace. I don't know if you need to do grace. That word just came to my mind. You need to be the leader that you always needed. You need to be supportive. You need to be open to questions. You need to encourage questions. You need to encourage failure because and make sure that we learn from our failure, right? You need to push a little bit. You need to show a little strength and say, hey, you failed. That's okay. What did we learn from it? What are we learning from this to make us better in the future, right? Being vulnerable, ask yourself as a leader, asking questions, asking for help. You're a human too. So setting that stage, setting the tone, I think is so important. Showing people that they're accepted for who they are and that their diversity, their diverse backgrounds, experiences is what makes them so important to this team. Allie mentioned the Patrick Lencioni, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Such a great book. And it's so easy to read. It's like a business fable. It's like 100 pages. It's really fantastic. I love it. So not only do leaders set the tone, but good leaders, I think, learn a lot from their employees. So if you aren't currently a leader, I think you can still start with like a grassroots movement and start trying to instill this type of culture in your team. Even if it's like one person at a time, learning how to grow a safe relationship just with one other person. And then maybe the two of you can start expanding it to your team. And I have a whole other presentation about what it takes to grow that safe environment. So that is a very loaded sentence, but just working on kind of growing it up from the roots. Leaders will take notice of that. Good leaders will take notice of that. Bad leaders will feel threatened by it, which hopefully you don't have to deal with. But just know, no matter what position you're in, you can start making changes if you just make decisions from the heart and embrace people for who they are and the just awesomeness that they bring to your team and how great your team can be if everybody can let their light shine. So in the end, I think we need each other. We don't have to make the fool's choice. And we can lead with empathy and by being true to ourselves. So those are the solutions to those three fallacies of I work better alone, I have to make the fool's choice. I guess that we don't have to make the fool's choice. That's not a great solution, but we talked about it earlier. And then leaders have to lead with strength. I think leaders can really show strength through their empathy and by being true to themselves. The 100-page book that was mentioned is The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Super good. I read it like in 2 nights. All right. I don't want to take any time away from your networking because I think that's so important as well, getting to know each other. And I just want to make the Minneapolis and St. Paul tech community as just like strong and just embracing as it can be. So I want you all to be able to talk to each other. I know Jeff really wants you to too. He has put so much work into this, and that's the whole reason for these speaker series is so we can test out this platform and make the OSN conference in the spring as like community building as possible, because that's the best thing about that conference is just seeing all your old friends and making new friends and making new networks. So thank you so much. I really, really appreciate you all being here. If you ever want to reach out, if you ever have questions or have specific questions or examples, I would love to hear them. I'd love to talk through more. This is my Twitter, Cassandra Danger, because I don't have a middle name, so I instilled it to be Danger. And I'm at Prime Digital Academy. If you ever have questions about that, Christy Larson or myself would be happy to talk to you. So thank you so much, everybody. I'm super happy. I'm very stoked to have been here today. So have fun networking, and hopefully I'll talk to you all soon.